Hello again, everyone. Ken from Whittling Woods back again with another video here. We're going to do the hand today, and you can see some measurements right up on the screen and the little diagram over there. I'll try to make it available for download as well, so you can use it as a template. We're going to be using this North Bay Forge small knife over here for the whittle, just one knife. And basically the key here is to look at the hand in a number of planes. On the top, I look at the fingers as 3 planes, and the palm area as the fourth plane that we're going to be whittling there. And you can kind of see how I mark those out. And I'm going to be starting here, taking down that the tip of the finger plane. So we'll work it in phases. We're going to remove some of the wood up front, and then we'll start the next plane and go to the one a little further in, and then kind of start it again just to keep those the form. So this is kind of the area where the second plane would be, and then we'd start the third plane over here. Like I said, we're just kind of removing the wood initially. This is not the final cut. I got to get the wood in front of the those planes in the back out of the way first. So you can see here I'm going again and kind of refining it just a bit more. And we're going to curve the fingers sort of around a bit, so it'll change slightly. Right here, I'm kind of taking the wood. If you noticed in the diagram, there was kind of a marked off spot. We're going to remove some of that wood here because we don't need that. That's going to be the index finger and then the thumb kind of down below that. If you take it step by step, it's not necessarily difficult. You can simplify this by not putting as much detail, or you can put a lot more detail in there. Now we're kind of start that fourth plane, and in the process I'm also rounding over the surface, from the sort of the thumb to the small finger. Your hand sort of curves if you look at it from the top slightly. That's a nice thing about this. You have a ready-made model right at hand, so to speak. All the wood below the palm, or the main part of the hand over there, is going to be smaller. So I'm going to start narrowing which would essentially be the wrist. You can see here I'm removing the wood below the hand, which is, like I said, essentially the wrist. So again, looking at your own hand, you can see that's much more narrow. So, as we work through the whittle, we'll thin it out even more. You can see here we're basically just, we whittled the bottom a bit, sort of a bit. The top is kind of, rounded over, and then you have a bit of a concave portion in the palm and the fingers, the inside of your hand, or the bottom of your hand, whatever you want to call it. I drew a couple lines in there for kind of where the thumb will be, and where the bottom of the fingers will end in the palm, approximately. I put a mark in there for your sake and my sake. And then here we're just kind of rounding over that the end of the thumb. And since the thumb sits a bit lower than the rest of the fingers, we're going to be removing some of the wood to get that thumb properly placed. And I'll start removing some of the wood below the thumb, because the thumb joint kind of sticks out from the side of the main part of the hand there. So we're going to, and you can see there I just kind of have the thumb initially out, and then I'm going to sort of start to. If you look at your own thumb, you'll see that it's basically kind of hollowed out in two sections below the the middle joint over there. So I sort of work towards that. I do little scooping cuts, and I do that also in the fingers eventually as well. Here we're going to be forming that. I drew some lines in there. You can kind of see I'm just curving around the little ball of your palm over there. So I'm just basically removing some wood so I can, around it, so I can have some wood remaining there to play with, to add a bit of detail in, and work in the thumb. Again, if you look at your own hand, you can see that sort of protrudes out a bit, that portion of the palm. This is really a great little whittle to fool around with. It teaches you quite a bit about whittling, because you're working with with and against the grain. You're doing stop cuts. You're doing pairing cuts. Line cuts. It's everything all in one. And you like I said, you're looking at your hand as you're whittling, so it's a real easy thing to stop and just say, okay, how does it look on my own hand, and then just kind of work it from there. Here I'm just taking a little time to again refine that a bit more, and as the whittle goes on, I'll even finish it up even more. And you can kind of see from the images on the up on the upper left over there what it eventually will look like. Kind of looks like a mitten right now. There you go. I'm kind of doing that little scooping cut above the joint in the thumb over there. Now I drew in some lines, reference lines, for where the fingers will be separated and where the little joints and of the finger will be. They're not all aligned. If you look at your own hand, you'll see that the joints are obviously slightly different on each one. So the two middle fingers, it's they're pretty close, but the pinky and the index finger, and you can see there. And what I like to do is I divide the finger first in half, and you can kind of see from that initial diagram. I divide the finger in half, and that's that middle knuckle joint. And then I take the top part of the finger and I divide it in half again, approximately, and that's how I get that. Again, these are not anatomically correct. They're basically just really pretty simplistic, stylized whittles here, but fairly realistic looking. But that's how I kind of divide up the fingers, and you can make them skinnier or change it around a bit. And here I'm just going along, and like I said, I separated the fingers with a long linear cut there, and then I went in on either side of it, and you can kind of see here I'm slightly curving. Watch how I kind of curve it around. Again, if you look at your own finger, you kind of see that's how it goes. So that's all. You're just going back over that cut that you initially made and just curving it around, and you're going to kind of get that hollow in the finger there that our fingers have. So it's not all that difficult to do. I'm using one knife, so it's and it's a relatively small knife. Probably a little easier with a small knife than it would be a larger knife, but you can certainly do it with any kind of knife. I just happen to have this one honed up and ready to go. Again, some more reference lines for the inside part. I think I initially put that line that I just cut a little bit too high. I probably wind up sliding it down a little bit further, but that's where the fingers come into the palm of your hand over there. Then I'm going to separate the fingers on the a little closer up there on the inside over there. And same thing we did on the top of the hand. Put a little linear cuts in there, and then go back and as if you had a V gouge. You're going to go back and then, kind of scoop that out a bit, and then add your detail, which we'll eventually come back in and do. But there you go. And then here we're just going to create those little folds in the thumb over there. So I'm just removing a little bit of wood. There's kind of like a three components to your thumb in the skin over there before it meets that ball. So I'm just kind of just playing around with that, trying to give it the look of a thumb in there. These are fun little whittles to do. You can, start off with something very basic like this, with the hand completely open, and then, I did a whittle not too long ago of a peace sign, so you can, form all sorts of little, hopefully polite gestures with the hand, or maybe you have a reason these days to do one gesture, but today we're being nice and polite. And I'm just kind of, playing around with the palm a bit to get some of the valleys and ridges in the palm. I play with it a little bit. I'm bringing the fingers down a little bit further. Like I said, they were probably a little bit too high, so that's a little proper. The finger should end slightly below where your thumb ends, the bottom of your fingers, in other words. So they need it to come down just a bit more. And on the inside of your fingers, the inner part, the skin folds, so it kind of bulges out. So we're gonna the cuts are kind of be the wood's kind of be sort of rounded over on the outside, where on the top it was hollowed out. So you have a sort of a concave and a convex because of the way your skin needs to stretch as your fingers fold. That'd be an interesting little one to do. Fold it up, make it look like a fist or something, And again, this is kind of hollowing out those areas, those planes, so that the upper plane. So I'm just kind of, again, hollowing. You can kind of see I'm going from the joint, and then I'm hollowing each finger out. And I'm going to refine these a little bit more as I go here, because you can see the ring finger looks a little thick right there. And then again, we're going to come back in here and do the, a little bit of same idea on the pinky there. So you got a little pairing cut in there as well. And you got to kind of come in where the fingers separate and do the same kind of thing, a little bit of a scooping, hollowing cut like we did earlier between each of the fingers there. In case you haven't noticed with this one, I was actually struggling with this particular basswood. It's really old, this basswood, and it was super dry and crumbly. I gotta get some new basswood, because the stuff I have is ancient, and unfortunately I have a lot of it too. But if anybody knows a good way for rejuvenating basswood, a couple people have asked me that, and sometimes I'll soak it a little bit in water, but honestly, that's only works partially well. You can spray it a little bit. I've heard people say spray it with water and alcohol and those kind of things. But if anybody has a method for rejuvenating old crumbly basswood, let me know. I'd be happy to try it out and share my experiences. There you go. We're sort of getting there. It's still a little puffy, so we're going to have to work on bringing it down a bit. But that's what we do here. We work in phases. I don't try to remove all the wood at once. I like to nibble away at things sometimes because as I'm working in this type of thing, I'm trying to feel my way through it, and sometimes I go back and I'd rather remove too little wood than too much wood. The other thing that's a little odd, and you might even ask sometimes, like, boy, that seems like it's not a very good way to cut wood the way you're doing it, and you're absolutely right. Ideally, if you're doing this, you don't have a camera hanging over your head that you're trying to keep your figure in the center of in the field of view. So sometimes I wind up holding the piece in an odd way just to keep it in view, where I would much rather have it closer to my face and maybe at a slightly different angle, but you wouldn't be able to see it. So, when you're whittling, do what's safe and proper for you, whatever's comfortable. Don't whittle in a dangerous way where you don't know where that blade's going to go. Take your time and make sure you know where your blade's going when it's making that cut. You don't want it. You want it to cut wood. You don't want. If you're going to cut a finger, make sure you cut a finger when you're whittling a hand like this, not your own. Although honestly, if you get into this hobby, you're going to get a few cuts here and there. It's the way it goes sometimes. Just get a Band-Aid and you'll be good. Here I'm thinning out the wrist even more. I'm bringing both sides of it in a little bit underneath the hand there. And we're pretty close, as you can see here. But still, we need a little bit more detail. I'm going to put a little when you have your palms read, they look at those lines in your palms. So we gotta make sure we have those available for those palm readers out there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding those little creases in folds that you find in the palm of your hand, and you could do less or more or whatever you want. I'm just kind of playing around. There's no pattern to this. Look at your own hand and just play around with whatever you think feels right. Like I said, this is a really a really good whittle to. If you're into whittling and you've you kind of got the basics down, you're fairly comfortable with the knife and all that, and you've got to that point. Try whittling this for a good skill enhancement exercise, so to speak. They're fun to do, and you learn a lot. And try to find yourself some good basswood too. This used to be very good basswood, but it's a little dry right now. But in the end, I went through and I cleaned it up, so I kind of worked with it as best I could. The key, I think, when you do have basswood like this is make sure your knife is really sharp. This is the other thing I wanted to point out, as you can kind of see here. If you keep the planes in such a way on the hand, when you're done, you'll be able to create the effect of, as you look at your hunting hands, you should be able to see the arteries and veins, well, not the arteries, but the veins and tendons. They've kind of protrude a little bit, and you can kind of see if you leave a little bit. It's kind of hard to see in some of the images, but if you leave a little bit, maybe in the image up there on the left hand side to some extent, if you leave a little bit of faceting in there, it'll give the illusion of those tendons and veins. Kind of see a little bit in there. And here I'm just kind of working a bit on the knuckles, so I'm just kind of rounding over the base of the finger, just to kind of create the slight effect of a knuckle. I didn't go overboard here. I think at this point we're just kind of beginning to just clean things up, refine things a bit. Whittle's pretty much done. Doesn't, you know, it takes a little time to do, but you know, it's a fun whittle to do. I really enjoyed it. There you go. You kind of see. Cleaned a lot of it up, and I'm just trying to get the proportions correct as much as possible on the wrist and the hands. And I'm going to just kind of clean up the nails a bit, so to speak, give them a little manicure here, and around over the tips of the fingers just a bit more. For the nails, I just kind of come in and just do a little scooping cut right on the end over there, just to kind of make it look like there's a bit of a nail. You know, again, not going crazy on there. Make the cuticle area sort of flat across, and then a little hollowing cut for the nail. And there you go. It was a fun whittle. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, you know, what you think. I did enjoy doing this whittle, and I hope you give it a try. And you can kind of see some of the texturing in there that gives the illusion of veins and everything. But that's it for me. I hope you all have a great whittling week. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.